Well, welcome, Nina Rao. I'm so happy that you are here and that you agreed to do the interview for Goddess News blog and for this YouTube channel. It is really a great honor. I've been following you for a few years now, but I must admit that, I mostly knew of you originally as a musical companion to Krishna Das, with whom I did interview last week, so the viewers can check it as well. And I always, admire your beautiful voice. I know that at least once I heard you in a duet with Krishna Das, right, on one of the CDs. And as I was preparing for this interview, I also listened to some chant. Is it with your daughter?
Yes,
on your
probably.
website, and I thought it was just divine. My heart melted, it was such love there, and it's a very beautiful chant. So just for the viewers who are perhaps not familiar with the yoga path, I will explain that the chant is basically calling upon divine names. Would you agree with this way? Why singing? While mantra is basically saying the divine names, right? So, and calling upon the divine energy and divine names. But I really got interested in Nina Rao when I was watching a program on yoga on Gaia TV, and there was Nina, among all the guys talking about paths of yoga, and she started to teach. I thought it was the most beautiful moment in the whole series when she took her mala and she started to teach people a goddess mantra. And I thought we really need this here. And also, as you are all familiar with this idea that I'm trying to also reintroduce divine feminine to some research in the West, but I really do not provide any tools, and we really do not have many tools how to connect with the divine feminine. So Nina is here to help us with this. But before we go into the practical part, maybe you would like to say something about your background and about yourself, to connect with the viewers.
Well, firstly, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. Always happy to talk about spiritual practice. And honestly speaking, I never really thought very much about divine feminine or divine masculine ever on my spiritual path. My experience has always been that when we connect with that place inside of us, it doesn't really have a feminine or masculine feeling to me. But there are also many other ways of experiencing it as union and union with the divine. And so sometimes it's depicted, for example, in Tibetan Buddhism, you see the Yabyung image where you have the male and the feminine and the masculine in union together. You see it that it's depicted that way. In India, some of the deities are, there's Ardhineshwar, which is Shiva and Parvati. These are names of Shiva's the masculine, Parvati's the feminine or Shakti. And sometimes you see them split down the middle. It's one being, but it's split down the middle. So I think it's important to talk about divine feminine and understanding that it also exists in all beings. You don't have to be a woman to have divine feminine. We all have those aspects as we have masculine aspects, each of us. And very often our life's work is to balance the two and integrate the two, because sometimes they're at odds with each other. And so if you want to talk about a masculine aspect as being sort of aggressive or proactive in the world, we all have that as women as well. So there are many typical ways of talking about masculine and feminine. So I won't go into what the psychological implications are, but in terms of our practice from India, and even in Tibetan Buddhism, which originated in India and then traveled over the mountains into Tibet, there certainly are not only visual images that depict the divine feminine and divine masculine. For example, in Buddhism, you'd have Avalokiteshvara, or the Buddha as we see him. But we also have manifestations of Tara. And Tara is also the Buddha in his feminine form. So same way in India, there is a multitude of manifestations of the goddess, as she is called, or Devi, Devi. And in the multitude of sacred stories from India as well, depending on who you talk to, someone is the Paramatma, like the supreme Godhead. So you could have the followers of Vishnu who are Vaishnavas who would say that Krishna is. There are followers of Hanuman who would say that Sri Ram is. There are Shaktas who believe in the goddess as the supreme being. And then, of course, there are Shaivites who believe in Shiva, and so on and so forth. And that's in India. But over the course of time on my spiritual path, I have found that the way in which to approach all of this for me has been many different paths. When I met Krishnadas at first, it was just kirtan. We were singing all kinds of kirtan, but I was very drawn to the Hanuman Chalisa. And so that's a core part of my practice. But also, when I did go to India to meet my guru, this is her image over here. Her name is Sri Siddhima. And Siddhima was actually a devotee and took care of Neem Karoli Baba, who Krishnadas talks about as his guru. And so when I first met Krishnadas, I was so drawn into the chanting and the heart opening that I felt when I chanted with him, that I wanted so much to meet Neem Karoli Baba. But of course, he left the body in 1973. And so I thought, if I went to the source, I went back to Kenchi, which is the temple where Krishnadas met Neem Karoli Baba, that I might be able to connect more with Maharaji. So he gave me the whereabouts of where the temple was and wrote a letter for me, and also said, you should meet Siddhima when you go. So I then discovered, because she always kept herself so quiet, so hidden, that even during the time when Krishnadas and Ramdas and all the Westerners were with Maharaji, Maharaji kept Siddhima and some of the other Ma's, the women who were there, also behind the scenes. He never really brought them out and said, let's all hang out together. They were doing their practices or whatever they were doing behind the doors of what was happening in the temple, and people were coming to see Maharaji. People knew about Siddhima. They knew she was there, but she wasn't obvious. She certainly didn't show herself in that way. And even when we went to see her, after Maharaji had left the body and everything, she was there. But if you went for darshan and you asked her any advice, she would always say, I don't know anything, but Maharaji would have said this, And I hear now that Maharaji said the same thing to the devotees who went to see him. I don't know anything, but ask Hanuman, So they didn't really take their place in that way as someone who knows everything. However, they were there. And if you were able to arrive at that place of surrender, or even just asking for something, they were there for you. And that was my experience with her. So the reason why I brought this up in particular is, of course, she's a woman, but also when we went to Kenchi to meet her, there was a very special festival that was happening. And in India, it happens twice a year. It's called many different names. It's called Devi Navratri. Devi is goddess, and Navratri, Nav means 9, Ratri means night. So it's 9 nights in worship of the goddess. It happens once in the spring and once in the autumn. And the dates depend on the lunar calendar of the year. It's very much aligned with the times during which people are planting seeds for their farms, and also then the end of the harvest as well. It's often aligned with that time. But the 9 nights honoring the goddess are so intense, and it was the first time I had ever seen, even though I've grown up in India some years of my life, I never had actually experienced a puja like that for 9 days. So essentially what they do is they chant um, 700 verses in praise of the goddess. And it's called the Chandi Path, or it's called the Durga Shaptashati, or it's called, there are a number of different names depending on where you are from India. So I got interested in the idea of the goddess, and I started reading some books on the goddess, namely one is called the Devi Mahatmya. And it's such an interesting thing, as it always happens in India. You never know who comes first, who is the originator of anything. But as the story goes, there was a great demon that needed to be vanquished, Mahishasura, who came down from many different other demons that exist in other storylines, Jaya and Vijaya and Shumba, Nishumba, and so forth. So, and then ultimately Mahishasura then takes more forms later on as Raktabija and so forth, as the story goes. But at this particular moment in time, the very simple story is that Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, who are the creator, sustainer, and transformer or destroyer of the universe, who also have their feminine aspects. There's Saraswati, who is a feminine aspect of Brahma. And then you have Shri or Narayani or Lakshmi, who is the feminine aspect of Vishnu. And Shiva's feminine aspect is known as Parvati or Uma, Bhavani, many different names. It's said, though, at this time that these three felt that they just didn't have enough. They needed the Shakti to actually overcome this great demon. So not only did they offer their feminine aspects, offered themselves, but even all the other devatas like Indra and so on up in the heavens also did the same. And they created this beautiful Devi. And Devi becomes Durga here. So Durga, the root of her name actually comes from difficulties. So she is the one who helps us overcome difficulties. In the story, in the Leela of the goddess, of course, there's an actual demon. He's in the form of a buffalo, and there's a long story that goes with that. But she is worshipped as not only one who helps us overcome difficulties, but she brings us well-being by giving us her form. And in the Chandi part, as you go through the 700 verses, which are written in Sanskrit, and normally they're recited by Brahmins who are well studied in Sanskrit, but luckily for us, we have a lot of Westerners who've translated, and so we're able to do the practice on our own. If you do it the traditional way, there's a fire ceremony and offerings are made to the goddess and so on. There's a very strict discipline that goes with that. So she is divine feminine. And you have men who are on the same path as, so it's not divided by men and women, but it's basically finding those qualities within ourselves. What are these qualities? These qualities are of wisdom, of knowledge, of light, illuminating the mind, illuminating the heart, and cutting through. If you see any depictions of Durga, you'll see that she has some, depending on where she comes from in India, she'll have 4 arms, she'll have 6 arms, she'll have 8 arms, and she's got weapons.
Yes.
And these weapons, according to the story, are to destroy the demon. But who is the demon? The demon are the negativities of our own mind. And as you go through the verses in this book, we are bowing down to Chandi. Chandi is another name for Durga, but specifically her form that tears apart thought. Because all day long we have thoughts going through our minds. We're thinking about ourselves, and it's tearing apart the thoughts of Chanda and Munda. That's the demons of too much and too little. We're always straddling that. Oh, we don't have enough of this, or oh my God, this is too much of that. That's essentially where we are. We're trying to find our clear middle path through this activity of our mind all the time. And by invoking her presence, we help ourselves do that, so that we can find our place in our own hearts, where everything is equanimous, everything is equal, everything is at ease, everything is peaceful, no matter what's going on around us. No matter what. We can't change that.
Thank you for this. Yeah. Thank you for this, because I just, let me interrupt you for a moment, because first of all, thank you for mentioning that, Devi, or the divine feminine, is both in men and women. And I absolutely agree with this as well. And lots of supporters, of my blog and this YouTube channel are men who says we need to, bring up this part in ourselves, right? So it's definitely not about gender, an agreement here. And also, it's so good to say that, Durga helps to destroy also certain thoughts in our mind, because I struggle with this all the time, and I'm sure everybody else, who listens. I was in such a bliss after, for example, seeing a teacher, or even after the interview with Krishna Das, because, he reminded me what's important. And then, bang, few days later, I cannot sleep, because I have things at work. I have to take care of so many things. It's just so difficult to stay in this presence of peace and bliss, right?
So you get there first to even stay in it.
So. That's right, yes. And even if you get there, like I get there, but then I just, bang, I fall back and I have to get up. And I think it's probably a very common story, right? Like,
I think that's the nature of human life, We are trying to find that place to stay in longer and longer, as much as we can, because every moment there's something we have to face, every single moment. It could be the smallest thing, or it could be a very big thing, It could be, it could affect a lot of other people. It could also just be what's going on inside of ourselves. But if we don't deal with what's happening inside of us, then there's no way to deal with everything else that's going on in a good way. And what does it mean to be a good way? I think, as I saw Siddhima, seeing people who were coming to see her, I saw, because I would translate for her, because I can speak Hindi, and we had a lot of Westerners who were coming. So I was in the room often listening to the kind of troubles that people brought, whether they were Indian or Westerners or whoever they were. And, never did I feel any judgment or evaluation on her part about what is good or what is bad. I mean, if people asked her opinion about, shall I do this or shall I do that, then she will offer a suggestion. But she was so accepting of everything, of all our craziness in our minds, all the problems we brought to her, all the questions that she's probably answered like 100 million times.
Yeah.
But she was there, she was present for it. And it was all okay, no matter what we came to her with. And if we can just use a little bit of that to meet everything that comes to us in our lives, and how other people might be relating to us, like if we could do that, it would just make it so much more welcoming and open for everyone. And if everybody is able to have their experience and be themselves, I think that it might create a sense of ease for more of us, more of the time.
That's right. A sense of peace, right? A sense of peace in our everyday life. Because as I said, I'm falling, I can get up there, but I'm falling almost as quickly, So it is a daily It's a daily struggle for me. So that's why, thank you for sharing this, and obviously your teacher somehow managed to stay connected to this presence within her and share it with other people, right? Because she was always full of love and full of understanding, almost like a mother goddess. Somehow she connected to this energy, and I think this is what people who are committed to their spiritual path uh, and great beings, they have this ability to transmit this energy to us as well, right? So we can feel it. So we can talk about it. Oh, you will feel peace, but you know what it really is, yes. And then you are there and you feel this deep peace, right?
Well, they embody it, they embody it. So just by sitting around, I mean, she didn't give teachings, she didn't give courses. She basically just sat in the room when we went to see her, and she was very simple, she wore her white sari, and she would sit and she would tell stories of Maharaji. That was one of her favorite things to do.
Yes.
And people also found that when they sat in front of her, even if they weren't able to physically ask her a question, many of their questions were just answered by sitting with her. But one thing she did, if there was anything she ever said and gave as a prescription for any of us, was that she felt it was very important to do practice and to have a very disciplined practice. No matter what you chose as your practice, choose something and do it and develop a discipline so that you do it every day. She was very, very particular about this. Because, as you were saying before, it's so easy to lose connection with that place, that if we keep doing practice, no matter what our mood might be on that day, it's very hard to keep also a good intention when you're doing a practice. You could be distracted about whatever you have to do in the day. But the fact is that you're sitting down and doing it. And if you believe, as I do, that spiritual practices will help to grow that access to our inner heart, only by doing the practice do you understand that it actually works. We have to find out for ourselves. People can tell you as much as they want, but when you have your own experience of it, you can believe it more and more. But until you do it, you're never going to really know. And then once you start it, you do it more and more. And so this was very important for her as a guidance for us. She was very, very clear about that. And the way in which she kept the temples, they were spotless and beautiful, and all the priests were doing the pujas all the time for the deities. That was always happening. But she always said to us, go and sit in front of, Hanuman or Devi or wherever you want to be, because there were multiple deities in the temple. And then, she said, you can come here, take your retreat here, but when you go home, don't forget. You can still do the same practice, and even if it's so simple that you just find a little corner in your room, like where I'm sitting right now next to my bed, and find your place. Just find 5 minutes to sit down and do something.
Yes.
Even if you don't, yeah.
I'm sorry, and prioritize it, right? Because you think, oh, I'm too busy. But if you're too busy, you especially have to do it, right? If you're too busy, yes.
I think it's important, and she said this too, is it carve out some time in the day. And she always said that early morning was a good time, before you even start anything else. And if you're lucky, by the end of the night, if you feel like you have the energy, you can do a little bit more. But she felt that early morning was good. So we developed this habit that when we went to Kenchi, which is the ashram where we spent most time with her, or even in Rishikesh when we were there, we would get up at sunrise, usually around 3 o'clock or so, take a bath, and start. And then they would serve tea. Of course, I don't get up at 3 o'clock here. I mean, that doesn't happen. In my retreat time, I do that. But I have set a discipline for myself, especially during COVID, where we are at home, don't have to get on a plane, go anywhere, because I spent so many years touring, also a lot with Krishnadas and traveling. It was very hard to keep a particular time of day. So at that point, I would just say, so as long as I do my practice, sometime, even if it's on a plane, with somebody sitting next to me and they don't, I can silently do my practice. Just stay focused on that. And don't lose that thread. As simple, it can be a very simple practice, but just to do it.
Keep regularly, systematically, right? Not when you feel bad, but even or good. You just do it all the time, right? Regardless of the mood. Yes.
Regardless, you just do it as if you're brushing your teeth. You're going to brush your teeth no matter what. So just sit and do your practice, right? Doesn't, whether you're going to meet somebody, whether you're going out, whether you're not doing, it's for your own wellness you brush your teeth. So in the same way, just do the puja. And even if you feel like you're distracted or you're sad or you're angry or you're anxious, or if you're happy, great, then you can do it with a lot of bhav, or devotional feeling. But the point is to do it every day.
I love this example of brushing your teeth because, yes, we never forget to do this, right? And what about your inner well-being, right? We should even prioritize it more than, brushing our teeth, right? So it's just probably about creating a daily routine.
Right? And there are so many different ways to create, there are so many different types of spiritual practices. You and I were talking earlier about divine feminine, in so many different traditions, there's so many different ways of honoring divine feminine as well. So whatever your spiritual tradition is, it could come from your family, your heritage, what the family you were born into, but sometimes that doesn't work for everybody. So then you seek out what you want to seek out. And I actually was reintroduced to chanting when I started going to yoga classes. I chanted as a child with my family in India, but then I never did it after that. And I came here to America, and yoga was becoming a big thing in the 80s and more mainstream. And that was when I first met Krishnadas at a yoga retreat.
So this is where it happened. And when you thought, I think I read it, you said you realized how much you missed it, right?
It's not even that I didn't realize how much I missed it. I just realized, I just remembered, I remembered
yes.
that, I used to have this feeling of connectedness when I did it, but there was no way to continue the practice because my life was just the way it was and as it is. But ever since I first started chanting with Krishnadas, I never let go of it. It just became deeper and deeper for me. And I explored my own ways of doing the chanting practice, but even reading sacred texts, reading about saints. Even though I have my guru, I like to read about different types of saints, and there are so many from all traditions, and there's not that much written about them as there are about male saints, but there are books and stories to be read.
Yes, and to find an inspiration.
Yes.
So this is, when we are probably moving to the practice because we really want to learn about that. And I just want to say that I found a quote from you on your website, which says that chanting, I think, I'm just paraphrasing, chanting is my path, my practice, and my destination. Something like that.
Chanting is my path, my journey, and my destination.
Yes.
I'll just expand on that a little bit, to say that, people talk about enlightenment and there are these very lofty words of where we need to be. And I've just found that if I focus on just doing my practice, making sure I do my practice, then it is my path. Doing the practice is the path. Doing the practice is also what I do every day, so that's the journey. And then ultimately, if I can even just get myself to sit down and do my practice, then that's my destination. Everything else that comes to me after doing the practice is what comes. That's the merit. And I certainly don't have any goal, an end goal of enlightenment. I believe that if you do practice, as they say about repetition of the divine name, that inevitably it will take us to the place where we are always at ease in our own hearts. But I don't know when that's going to be. So chanting is the place, it's my refuge. That's where I go to build the foundation to live a good life.
So chanting, mantras, meditation. I heard once a spiritual teacher saying, do not judge your practice. So if you meditate, just say to yourself, I'm having meditation, I'm having, rather than imagining that you have to have some kind of divine meditation, seeing divine beings, which is could be a form of delusion too. Just be present with your practice. And in forgiveness, and give yourself credit for the fact that you did find the time to sit down. You things are crazy outside, at work or at home, but you honored that in a space just by sitting down and doing your practice, rather than worrying about enlightenment. Right?
There's no way that we can even know what that means. We can aspire toward it because we know that when people have reached that place, as in the Buddha, for example, he was at ease with everything. So we all want to be happy. We all want to, how do we find that place? It's certainly not by acquiring things or controlling our relationships with other people. We can't.
Absolutely. So would you like to share perhaps some mantra practice? And I'll just introduce it that mantra is usually done with mala, right? Or it doesn't have to be, but it makes it a little bit easier. And this is my old mala, which I bought a long time ago when I was in deep trouble. Sometimes you had to go, through the tough times to open up to spirituality fully. And for people who are of Catholic background, like I was originally, it's not that different from a rosary, really. And it's just a personal opinion. I don't want to insult anybody. The reason why I use mala rather than rosary, because mala, through repetition of a mantra and divine names, I felt that I connected with my inner self, that I connected with something beautiful and peaceful and blissful. When I was repeating, let's say, Catholic prayers, it was always about, have mercy on me, sinner. And I just didn't want to connect with this, the sinner. I wanted to connect with, see maybe divinity in myself and in other people. See something good in this practice, bring up the best part of myself. But really, you can use either mala if you want to use it, or you can even use a Catholic rosary, right? It's the same practice, really, isn't it?
I believe so. I'm not really sure about mantras in Christianity or Catholicism. Maybe you repeat the name. Since you're Catholic, maybe you can share. Can you give us an example of something that you would?
I'm a former Catholic, let's put it this way. But for example, there are mantras to the Mother of God or Virgin Mary, right? So you can say a prayer, and there's also it's called rosary, which is exactly like mala. So just to say it several times, you have a rosary and you repeat the name. So for example,
you just repeat the name too.
Yes, just there's a short prayer. There is a short prayer. So you can do it as well. So sometimes, people of Catholic background, it's easier for them to embrace also the mala, because, that was introduced to them in a slightly different form in their childhood, like for me. So for me, it was really easy to basically move on to mala, right? To having a mala and repeating the mantra this way. But actually, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't need to have a mala to say the mantra, right?
You actually don't. No, you don't. And also, I think maybe the difference also is that there isn't really a particular prayer with words, that are in sentences necessarily, that have to do with mantra repetition. The whole thing about mantra repetition is that these are names that they call as revealed names. So the names of the divine come from rishis or seers from many thousands of years ago who had done so much practice that they were able to access that those names were transmitted to them. And so these names have an inherent power of their own, even if you don't understand what the meaning is, because ultimately we only really understand the meaning of it when we fully understand everything. So as we were talking about enlightenment before, we don't know what that is. But we do know that these names have been repeated and have lasted over generations and generations. And people have found peace in the repetition of these names.
These names have power, right? These names have power. And now just before, maybe if you could think about the goddess mantra, I would just remind the viewers that the same in Western traditions, when you think about the old goddesses, for example, Isis or Inanna, you know, it was also about repetition of the name. So, and it was believed that the name of the goddess, for example, Isis, carries a great power in itself. Right? So it is a different word when saying, for example, I'm happy or I'm not happy or I have to do my shopping. There's a power in the name of the goddess or of the divine, whether masculine or feminine. There's a certain energy, and through repetition of the name, you can connect to it.
Correct.
So I'll shut up now, and can you think about some, teach us maybe some goddess mantra, and if you want I can show here also, but I was delighted to see that I found mantras on your webpage, and I'll leave a link to your webpage at the end. And I said Amba Bhavani, and I assume that Bhavani is the goddess mantras, right?
Yeah, it is.
And Saraswati, I love Saraswati. Saraswati, which is goddess of wisdom, really. Saraswati, Sharade Devi, also the mantras are here. And I think here I also like Jai Ma, Jai Guru Maharani, right? Because of the ending with I assume that it is for our goddess mantras.
Yeah, I'll just say that even though it says mantras, these are actually the words to the chants that I sing. So I was going to share something, since you mentioned Saraswati. I should do a Saraswati mantra.
Please.
And so for those who would like to know a little bit more about Saraswati,
I actually, yeah, you have it? Yeah? Okay.
Well, she is on my altar. I just didn't know if I could reach her. So here
yes.
she is.
Yes, that's Saraswati.
Okay. This is let me just move this mala out of the way. Okay, there we go. So now you can see that she is seated on a lotus. Sometimes you see her seated on a swan. Maybe there's a swan there too. And she is holding an instrument called the veena, which is considered the most ancient string instrument ever made. And it has 7 strings for the 7 notes that correspond to, I'll put her in front of me so I can see her, that correspond to the 7 chakras in our body. So she is considered to be the goddess of learning, the goddess of knowledge, the goddess of the arts as well. So writing, music, visual images. But most of all, when I think about her, I think about her also, if you see depictions of her, she's holding a mala. So we invoke her when we want to do our practice, any practice. Often she's chanted to first is Saraswati. I also think of her as, with all these faculties, if we're able to harness our inner wisdom and do our practice, it gives us a lot of clarity about how we're going to be. So she's the goddess of discernment for me, like the ultimate wisdom. So a very simple mantra for Saraswati is Om, and then Aim, A-I-M. Om Aim. Aim is what they call a seed syllable or a bija mantra. in our tradition, which basically is the essence. These Bij mantras actually, they say, are actually transmitted even by the elements of nature. And so that's how they took that form. And these are the seers who found it. So Aim activates Saraswati. So we say Om Aim Saraswatiye Namaha.
Namaha.
Namaha means to bow. So we say Saraswatiye means I bow to Saraswati. So Om Aim Saraswatiye Namaha.
Namaha.
So that is a very simple, beautiful mantra for Saraswati. And we can do that. You want to do that together?
Yeah, let's do this. Yes.
How many times would you like to do it?
You tell me.
We can do a full round, which will be 108, which is what you have on your mala, if you like.
Yeah.
If you,
yes,
you know,
we can do this. Yes. Yeah, please
okay.
do. Yeah.
All right. So let's do that. I'll take my mala out.
Let's invoke Goddess Saraswati and
Yes.
wisdom and divine wisdom in us.
Yes. It's there. You just have
Sometimes
to activate it. Okay. So for those of you who want, this is she has I think Joanna has a crystal mala. Mine is made of wood. It's actually made from the tulsi plant, which is actually considered the goddess herself in India. In fact, there was just a tulsi puja recently in India that's practiced all around the country. But she is often, when you go to places in India, the tulsi plant is worshipped in the house. So they're often kept, she's kept in the courtyard, and everybody, they'll do arti to her every night as,
beautiful.
as the goddess. Yeah. So there is a guru bead, and then the rest of the mala is 108 beads. And if you're doing multiple repetitions of the mala, which we won't do today, basically you do 108 and then you turn the mala around and go backwards again, rather than crossing over the guru bead. That's just the way we do it in India. Okay. So let's start with Om 3 times, and then we'll you just chant along with me, okay? Om. Om. Om is a primordial sound. Om. And we'll begin. Om Aim Saraswati Namaha. Aim Saraswati Namaha. Om 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 Aim Saraswati
Namaha.
Om Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati
Namaha.
Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati
Namaha.
Namaha.
Om Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati
Namaha.
Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati
Namaha.
Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati
Namaha.
Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati
Namaha.
Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati
Namaha.
Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati
Namaha.
Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim Saraswati
Saraswati
Namaha.
Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati
Namaha.
Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati
Namaha.
Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim Saraswati Namaha.
Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om Aim
Om
Saraswati Namaha. Om Aim Saraswati
Saraswati
Namaha.
Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
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 Saraswati Namaha.
Om Aim
Om Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om Aim Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Namaha.
Om Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati
Namaha.
Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati 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 Namaha.
Om
Om
Aim
Aim
Saraswati
Saraswati
Om Aim Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om Aim Saraswati
Saraswati Namaha.
Om Aim Saraswati Namaha. Om. So you might find that just by doing that repetition with some focus and intention, while you're doing it, the thoughts will come through your mind. And as you do the practice more and more, you'll be able to let go of those thoughts. And a meditative feeling will arise in the moments after you finish, or even while you're doing the practice. And so it's a very beautiful pathway into that feeling of meditation, that feeling of going inside, going inward, and letting the thoughts fall away. And it's so simple, you know. You don't have to do it out loud. You can actually, japa practice is done sort of as if you're whispering. Om Saraswati Namah, Om Aim Saraswati Namah, like that. So you can do that, and you can do it also in your mind, you know, when you're in public. You don't need to be walking around doing your mantra out loud, but you're standing in the line, you're driving, you're on a plane, you know, you're just sitting.
Yeah, thank you. It was beautiful. Just kind of opening the heart space for me. You know, I felt like, wow, I should do it more often. I should do it more often.
Well, some people take vows, like certain days of the year. They'll say, well, I'm going to I'm going to do 100 malas today.
Mm.
So you find a way to just keep doing it, like um, throughout your day. It's hard to use your mala while you're cooking, but
Mm.
certainly when you're preparing your food, you can repeat your
Mm.
mantra. In fact,
Mm.
in the temples, when the prasad was prepared in the kitchens, there's actually no chatting allowed. The people
Mm.
preparing the prasad in the kitchen are repeating the mantra the whole time. So the food becomes blessed also.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes, that's a beautiful practice. Also, silent practice, nothing showy, just, it's you and your practice.
Yeah.
Very, very basic and very grounding.
Yeah. And the more you do it, you'll find that, I mean, it happens to me sometimes, I'm in my half waking state and the mantra is actually going on already
Mm.
without
Mm.
me actually doing it. It's, they say that mantras are uh, always going on and they're invoking us in a certain way, like
Mm.
reminding us. We just have to find that place where we meet them. So when
Mm.
we do the practice, we're kind of pulling the mantras out of the akash, out of the sky.
Out in the
And
sky, I love it. So
yeah,
the mantras are actually calling out to us, and we just have to walk towards them
I
through,
feel
through our
that way.
practice. That's
I
wonderful.
definitely feel that way. Yeah.
That was so beautiful. Thank you, Nina. And you offered, is the offer still on, to be considered that perhaps you would share a brief chant with us, so you can hear your voice because this is your devotional practice as well. I cannot chant with you because trust me, if I tried, people would run away because of my voice. But I love listening to chanting, and I do chant when nobody can hear me, right? So I know
Okay.
so I think it's devotional, so I don't have to have a beautiful voice. But if you could choose maybe some goddess chant, could
Sure.
you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So since you brought up, uh, you reminded me of a chant I actually haven't sung in a long time. It was
Mm.
on that page that you opened.
Mm.
It's also continuing with Sharada, with Saraswati. Another name for her is Sharada, but it
Mhm.
also invokes Bhavani. So the words in the chant are Amba Bhavani Sharade,
Mhm.
Jagat Amba Bhavani Sharade. Okay? Amba Bhavani Sharade, Jagadamba Bhavani Sharade, 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 Satchidananda Satchidanandani Sadhu Rakshini, Satchidanandani Sadhu Rakshini, Satchidanandani Sadhu Rakshini, Nandani Anandani Satchidanandani, Nandani Anandani Satchidanandani, Nandani Anandani Satchidanandani, Amba Bhavani Sharade Jagatamba Bhavani Sharade, 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 Sharade.
That was just beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing with us, these two very important practices, because sometimes it's very difficult for people just to sit and meditate, but when they can do the mantra, or they can chant, or they can attend chanting session, right? Because there are all kinds of gatherings. And also, if you're interested, at the end, I'll put the links to Nina's website, and she has many events, and she has CDs and so on. So you can check also what's going on if you would like to, follow the type of worship of the divine. And I agree that divine is the divine. I just think that something is missing sometimes when we focus only on the masculine representation of it. So I think the world would definitely benefit from a little bit more of this different type of love, so to speak, right? That is represented. So I'm just talking always about bringing the balance back rather than, replacing one with the
I
other.
agree 100%. There's actually a very beautiful book that my friend Mirabai Starr
Oh,
wrote.
yes, yes.
It's called Wild Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read it, she talks about this very thing that you're talking about, where it's important, the divine feminine, the Shakti, has been hidden for so long that we almost forget that it's there. And it would be very nice to bring back that balance. And so we might have to tip the scales a little bit and talk about the divine feminine. And she actually talks about the divine feminine in many different traditions, including Christianity, including Judaism, including Buddhism, including Hinduism. She talks about, beautiful, like I have on my altar here. This is one of my favorite Devis. This is Our Lady of Guadalupe
Yes,
from Mexico.
yes,
And she is a manifestation of Mary.
yes,
But she has also been infused by the ancient native Indian tradition from Mexico as well.
yes,
So,
yes.
there's so many different ways to
Yes,
access.
many, many beautiful ways. Yes. So, and because the paths are many, yeah, you just have to choose one and walk it.
Or more.
Yeah, more, that's right.
Yeah.
And you just have to choose at least one and commit yourself to this. Really. Choose your practice,
I
whatever.
think choosing the practice is important. I mean, wherever you can get a spark of brilliance from, whoever the divine beings might be, whatever the stories might be, whatever the practices might be. But for yourself, it's important to choose something that you're going to do every day.
Yeah. So something that appeals to you, to your heart, and you think like,
If it doesn't appeal, then you won't do it, right? So you
that's
should
right.
just
So when you say, oh, that's not for me, yes.
yeah.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful, and this was what was missing, from here. So thank you for sharing this with us. And when it is all edited, you know, has a cover and a back, I'm going to send the link to you. So, you know, you're free to use it any way you want. If you want to, you don't have to, you know, but it is going to be there, and I'm going to send the link for you. And, you know, with gratitude, really. And I'm sure everybody who will listen to this video, you know, and firsthand, you know, be able to hear you and to do the mantra together. Just a very beautiful experience.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you for
Thank you so
inviting me.
much. Thank you so much. With great gratitude. Thank you.